always a pleasure to be here, and I always try as hard as I can to support this excellent platform that's so flexible, that's responsive, that's contemporary, that's in people's homes, in people's pockets and in people's hands, wherever they happen to be.
For myself, I think it was really good to speak to some people that obviously we usually wouldn't meet in normal circumstances, especially being up north. We're not quite central. So it was nice to kind of get our opinions and our views across and to feel like they've been heard.
Even if just speaking to the professionals, I think, so the pop-up sermons that you had with that, which they would have seen online, would they?
I think you just can't beat coming here in person and being able to talk to loads of people that are here and ask all the questions that you need to ask. There's so many benefits to it. You meet lots of people, and it's just a really lovely feeling of camaraderie and interactivity.
So coming here, I feel like I've kind of felt like that I'm not alone in stuff that I'm going through at placement, and from what I've taken away from this is how to go about situations, how to make it better, and how to feel well supported as well. Because I had some top tips given, so going into placement, I just think I take them on board and try and make the most out of my learning experience.
For me, the main reason I wanted to come was for that networking, for finding my people, the people that are interested in learning about the same things that I'm interested in, and taking those away and sharing them, and because we're on Midwifery Society at our university, and just kind of sharing those with our fellow colleagues and everything. So yeah,
I'm going to be looking back at the things that we've gone through, because there was a lot of content. But I think the joys of now that we can meet face to face, so that's why we really wanted to be here face to face. There is something about meeting other people. So yeah, next time sign up, definitely.
Always a pleasure to be here, and I always try as hard as I can to support this excellent platform that's so flexible, that's responsive, that's contemporary, that's in people's homes, in people's pockets and in people's hands, wherever they happen to be.
For myself, I think it was really good to speak to some people that obviously we usually wouldn't meet in normal circumstances, especially being up north. We're not quite central, so it was nice to kind of get our opinions and our views across, and to feel like they've been heard.
Even if just speaking to the professionals, I think, so the pop-up sermons that you had with that, which they would have seen online, would they?
I think you just can't.
Welcome everybody to Maternity and Midwifery Hour this evening. First of all, you can see that I am not Sue McDonald, who usually does the hosting for this event. I'm Dr. Jenny Hall, and I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. And also apologies to those of you who tuned in tonight expecting a programme on breastfeeding, but it has been postponed. But be assured that we will be returning to breastfeeding later in the series, so do look out for that. In its place, we have a programme tonight which is on what do midwives do, which to many of us would seem to be quite obvious, but in many parts of the world, midwives are not recognised as separate from nursing, and also in many places, and even in this country, there is pushback as large parts of childbirth worldwide is becoming more medicalised. But we have two great presentations tonight from leading midwifery figures. We've got
Dr. Claire Feely, who has recorded a presentation for us, but also we have our first speaker, Dr. Maeve O'Connell, who is also known as Lovely Maeve, if you don't know that, and she is absolutely lovely. And she is live with us tonight, and it's a little bit later in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East. So good evening, Maeve.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum from Abu Dhabi.
It's lovely to have you with us, and thank you again for joining us. Maeve, at the beginning, usually Sue asks the question if you have a moment of the week, and I think you do have a big moment of the week that you'd like to share with everybody.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. I always love coming to Midwifery Hour. And my moment of the week, we are so excited because this week we achieved full CAA accreditation from the Ministry of Education for our Bachelor's of Midwifery degree program in the UAE, and we're really, really excited for that. So me and Dr. Gina are happy out. We're delighted with it. It's a brilliant achievement and an accomplishment for the whole team at Fatima College.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And for those who don't know and have Maeve and Gina have been sharing their story of how they have set up the program in Abu Dhabi on the blogs and our website. So do go back and look at those if you want to see how they have progressed. Is it 3 years you've been doing it, or 2 years?
It's taken 2 years, yeah. I'm actually 2 years in Abu Dhabi. On the 13th of October, I started in Fatima College. So yeah, it's taken almost exactly 2 years. And there was a work before us. You're right, the team before us that joined did work on this accreditation. So even 1 year before us. So yeah, probably has taken a total of 3 years to get the program through from the very first proposal.
And there's not been midwives there before. Is that not in that college?
Not in this college. It's the first midwifery program, yeah, in Fatima College, and one of the first midwifery programs in the country. There is a master's program in Ras Al Khaimah, and Higher College of Technology are opening a bachelor's midwifery degree in around UAE as well soon. So wonderful. We're very proud.
Wonderful. Well, that's absolutely great. So before we go on to the subject for tonight, I'm just going to remind everyone who perhaps might be people here who don't usually log into the Maternity and Midwifery Hour, but this actually started in the first COVID lockdown here in the UK because it was to keep in touch in relation to best practice, because CPD, etc., was stopped. Nobody was actually doing any. So it started as a weekly event to keep everybody up to date with all the changes that were taking place around COVID. And it's been so popular that it has kept going. And we're now on the 11th series. And if you haven't been part of this before and you want to look back at some of the talks that have taken place, if you scroll down to the bottom of the screen that you have there, you will find all of the programs there available to you, and the podcasts I know are available on other sources as well, so do go and have a look. All of these presentations, they go into the Netflix group of all the videos and talks from all the presentations that are done. And if you don't know what Netflix is and you haven't got this within your university and trust, and you want them to get it for you for study and revalidation, because you've got so many resources there that will be able to help you. So a little bit of news for this week. Tomorrow is International Teachers' Day, which is very relevant for Maeve, who's sitting there. And we'll be thinking of all the teachers and lecturers developing midwifery around the world. So something to focus on. And the 10th of the month as well is World Mental Health Day, which is also very important for all of us to be keeping a focus on that. And in this country, we've been reading of postnatal depression by Kate Forbes, who's a minister from the Scottish Parliament and the former finance minister in the Scottish government, and she's been talking about her own experiences and that it affects so many people. Interesting, today our Prime Minister made a statement. If you haven't caught it on the news, mostly it's been about travel, but he made one reference to maternity, which when he listed stillbirth as one of his key health targets for reduction. So something to be aware of and to keep an eye on as we are going forward into the next few months. The Maternity and Midwifery Forum, as you probably all know, that they run festivals regularly throughout the year, and coming up on the 8th of November, it is the Student Midwifery Festival that's going to be taking place in London, and it's also online around the UK. So it's free to attend in London, and you can also get a seminar or a lecture room and gather a group of you together where you can watch it there as well, and we can send you the link to that. So do let us know if you want to do that. Also on the 15th of November, we have the Midwifery Education Conference, which is for lecturers and managers struggling with the challenges of midwifery education at the moment in this country, from retention, from working in trust, pay gaps, etc., and research. It's all online. It costs £80, and it guarantees you the conference box set also at the end if you can't make the day. But some midwifery schools are already gathering all their staff together in one room for a collective booking to watch it in a seminar lecture theatre, which costs £240 for the whole school. So that seems to be quite a popular model. So look forward to seeing everybody there on the day. So that's all I have to say at this moment, and that's before 10 past, so I'm in a good space there for time. So tonight, what do midwives do? It seems obvious to us, but it is contested around the world. Midwifery in the UK envisages continuity of care throughout pregnancy, childbirth, and into infancy, but lack of resources, staff often are very frustrated about being able to deliver that. In addition, there's often pushback from other disciplines in the maternity team, especially when medicine and management envisage nurses performing tasks or functions along the journey which don't fit in with what midwives are expected to do. Internationally, we know there's a huge variety, and it's still the case that even in the USA, many are called nurse midwives and are not able to practice independently outside the supervision of doctors, often under the pressure of insurance models. However, the International Year of the Midwife, which was also disrupted very much by lockdown, we seem to make great progress. We did feel that we had, but it does need better public understanding. So tonight we are going to hear from our speakers, and then we will take questions. So you put your questions into the chat, which is again down below. If you haven't signed in, please sign in, and then you can chat with us. And then at the end, we will have time for questions where I will field the questions to Maeve, and we can have a discussion about some of the things that you're saying. And please also make any comments you'd like to highlight or point to other reports and research. Just join in, because it's meant to be a discussion, and it would be great to have you talking. So first of all, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Claire Feely. I'm very sorry again that she is not able to be with us tonight. She qualified as a midwife in 2011, has got a Master's of Science, and also she got her PhD in 2019. She has worked clinically in all areas of midwifery, in all settings and across different organisations. Across all birthplace settings, she specialises in physiological birth across the risk spectrum, water immersion, advocacy, and change implementation. Her primary research focus has been on the socio-cultural political interactions upon women's access to engagement with and experiences of maternity care, and grounded with interests of health inequalities, childbirth choices, autonomy rights, and care provision issues. A core research focus is on full scope midwifery skill, competence, and enabling or not working environments as a solution to overcoming many of the issues. Claire has published a lot of works at the moment, and what she's going to be talking about tonight is her new book that is going to be coming out, which is called Skilled heartfelt midwifery practice supporting physiology birth choices. So over to Claire's presentation.
Hello, my name is Dr. Claire Feely, midwife, researcher, lecturer and consultant. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. I'm so sorry I couldn't join in person, but I'm delighted to share some thoughts on what midwives actually do. And for me, when pondering on tonight's theme, it made me really think about what do midwives do when so often it might not look like anything at all. And it brought to my mind the parallels of good, excellent even, midwifery care so often mirrors that mothering or early days parenting and life with a newborn, where it doesn't seem to look like you're doing much, but yet you're doing so much. And for me, and hopefully some of you have read this amazing pioneering book from Naomi Stadlin, it's an absolute must read. And this really has that parallel between that I'm mentioning here now. So what do midwives do, especially when it sometimes looks like nothing? So first of all, midwife saves lives, and most of you on this call will know this statistic or this work from the Lancet Midwifery series, which identified key aspects of midwifery care that have been demonstrated to optimize women's and babies' outcomes. And here we can see midwives can optimize over 56 maternal and neonatal outcomes, including reducing mortality, stillbirth, and neonatal death. So midwives save lives, and you can see this wheel here of all the different components in which midwives make a difference. But midwives also seek to enhance women and birthing people's capability, and they seek to and should be working in partnership with those in their care. And throughout all of this, they should be optimizing well-being throughout. And they must hold both and perspectives throughout the childbearing journey. And I've just flipped through there. So I want to unpack this a bit more because there is so much to the midwife's role. So when we think about the skills that midwives need, the clinical and emotionally intelligent and those so-called soft skills are complex and far wide-ranging in the provision of safe care across the whole continuum. We must always have the whole continuum in mind. And these, of course, must include the understanding of the normal, typical parameters of childbearing physiology, including pregnancy and postpartum. And we need to understand these typical parameters of what constitutes normal physiology to effectively recognise those deviations that do require timely management or intervention and or escalation for medical assistance. Midwifery skills are not just limited to this component though. We must also acknowledge and recognise the skills of midwives also encompasses, and primarily what's so important, they encompass preventative measures and seek to optimise biopsychosocial outcomes. And midwives sit within a public health model of care which seeks to strengthen women's own capabilities. So effective midwifery practice, should I say, should be viewed both as a preventative mechanism for a whole host of potential morbidity and mortality concerns, but should also be viewed within a salutogenic lens, which focus on the creation, enhancement, and maintenance of well-being. A salutogenic approach recognises the potential for childbirth to be a positive, transformative experience for both mother and baby, from neurohormonally, psychologically, physically, and emotionally, rather than just a means of getting the baby out. So herein lies the core skills of midwives. The ability to support well-being enhancing mechanisms, processes, interventions even, which have to be grounded in women's and birthing people's unique personal circumstances and their own belief sets and value systems, religious or cultural or spiritual. So midwives need to support well-being and offer well-being enhancing processes, systems, mechanisms, but while remaining alert to at all times, attending to potentially life-threatening deviations should they occur. So this approach requires robust knowledge and competence to practice and apply sound clinical judgments to the individuals in front of us. This also demands that we hold two perspectives at once, both and. Childbirth is a normal life event. It's not a medical event. But childbirth also can endanger life. And we know that. That is a big part of the safe abortion and retaining choice for family planning, access to good abortion services. It all comes under this premise that there are enhanced risks potentially for someone who's pregnant. So as midwives, we have to hold both of these things together in our mind, because it's in with this space where we've got both and we're alert to those potential deviations, alert to those medical emergency or those emerging medical conditions that might happen during pregnancy, for example. We have to hold both of those because it's within that space that the benefits of the skilled midwifery practice facilitates those 56 improvements for maternal and neonatal outcomes. It is holding both and together, and that also not only acknowledges but honours experiences of care, experiences of birth itself, experiences in the postpartum as equally important as the physical outcomes as well. So what I'm saying, it's we have to walk a tightrope, and good, excellent midwifery care holds both of those things in mind all at once. So one way to achieve all of those things is through this concept of skilled, heartfelt midwifery practice. And this is a term that I've generated from my PhD findings that explored midwives who self-defined as facilitative of those who are seeking out of guidelines physiological birth choices. Many of you will know about that work, and you'll know about my previous book where I focused on the social, cultural, political components and context of those midwives when supporting these choices. However, my next book, out next month, hopefully, I'll be able to confirm very soon, I'm sharing a very different focus. This time, I've stripped away the context, away from the social, cultural, political components, which, although very important, I've already talked about them at great length. This time, I've stripped all of that away so I can get closer to the attributes, qualities, skills, and actions of those midwives within the midwife-mother relationship context. What did they do? How do they do it? Why did they do the things that they did, particularly for those who worked in challenging work environments? So those participants in that study has helped coin this phrase as terminology of skilled, heartfelt midwifery practice, and I'm delighted to share a preview about it today. So what is it? So in a nutshell, skilled, heartfelt midwifery practice is the integration of a midwife's attitudes and beliefs and philosophy in support of women's autonomy, aligned with values of relational care and with expert clinical skills. Cannot have one of these things without the other for good midwifery. So this whole concept centres the concept of safety through relational care. And this is thinking about the ongoing trusting therapeutic relationship between caregiver and receiver. And we know all about relational care. It's been well documented across healthcare and particularly in maternity. And we know it's a strong evidence base to improve biopsychosocial outcomes. Relational care typically arises from that continuous relationships, and we've all talked at great length about continuity of carer, and that's that extended period of knowing your caregiver. But I suppose what is helpful here from the skilled heartfelt practice and this new book, this hopefully is going to extend our understanding of relational care in of itself. I'm hoping it's put some colour and texture into what we mean about relational care. And with the exploration of the skills and qualities, because we talk about relational care all the time, but we don't talk about the skills. We know about clinical skills that we need. We know about escalation systems, etc. But if we're going to practice relationally, what other skills do we need? And I thread throughout the whole book, emotionally intelligent skills. Intelligent skills is certainly what we need. But the other aspect in this book is, although continuity of care makes this process so much easier and we know the documented benefits, but not all the midwives in the study were in continuity models of care. So what's been great about that is that can thread through these concepts and unpack and illustrate and, like I say, bring colour to what relational care might look like within a fragmented system. I'm not saying a fragmented system is what we want to aspire to, but that's where we are on the main, isn't it? So this hopefully gives us a way to think about relational care within those more challenging contexts and how we can cultivate that and how we can bring that to every interaction we have within our maternity caregiving. So to practice relationally, I explain in the book, requires attention to our personal attributes and our qualities, such as attitudes, beliefs, and philosophies, and, as I said earlier, emotional intelligence. For what we bring to the caregiving situation will affect the depth and quality of the caregiving and receiving relationships. It affects how we receive that two-way relationship as well. So a heartfelt practice, what do I mean by heartfelt? It seeks to emotionally connect and attune with those in our care. And that is that cultivation of a therapeutic relationship, which I think that terminology of therapeutic relationship was quite thread throughout a lot of midwifery literature in the 90s, but it does seem to have dropped off our radar, and I want to bring it back because this is where some of the magic happens, which is sometimes quite invisible. So a heartfelt practice seeks to emotionally connect and attune with those in our care, cultivating this therapeutic relationship. So that's why I argue we need to attend to our personal attributes that are required to practice relationally, but there's also what I'm talking about here, this also includes a willingness and a desire to connect emotionally. Faking it doesn't work, and we know that from what women are saying to us. Neutral care, this concept of neutral care is starting to emerge, where midwives appear, they're polite and friendly, etc., but that connection is not there, and women can feel it. So for midwives, though, I would also argue, and I argue at great length, that emotional intelligence, personal qualities and attributes must sit within robust clinical skill sets. For kindness, respect and dignity, while absolutely essential, are redundant if the clinical skill sets are substandard. Therefore, I argue both a mindset and skill set are required to safely support all births. So we know a fundamental remit of a qualified midwife relates to supporting and optimizing and facilitating the physiological processes of the childbearing continuum. Safe practice must include being able to, just lost my train of thought. Safe practice must include a complete grounding in good, robust theoretical knowledge. That then requires and helps us build the skills we need to identify and manage or escalate deviations known to cause harm and or which are life-threatening. Expert clinical practice rests on the ability to apply a wide range of knowledge to clinical situations while honouring the specific needs of those in our care. It does not rely on a rule-based approach, or as you've heard me call this before, a guideline-centred approach. It must, rather, this approach, skilled heartfelt practice, utilises an evidence-informed approach based on the core principles, as per David Sackett all that time ago in the 90s, which is based on the core principles of patient preferences and clinical judgment and the latest evidence. We have lost our way with evidence-based medicine, in my opinion. So expert clinical midwifery care practices and applies a judicious approach to care. So we don't want to intervene too quickly and we don't want to intervene too late. Both are equally important, and we know that from the evidence. And this, as I said as well, always maintaining the individuals, maintaining respect for the individual's wishes, desires, etc. in our care. And fundamentally, it's a reminder here, and this book shows how midwives can work with women and keep them as the sole decision maker. And through loads of vignettes and stories from the midwives, it demonstrates how it can be done, even within challenging contexts. There is so much more I want to say about this, but of course, as always, time is against us. But do join me in my book launch, hopefully next month. I don't have a firm date yet, but sign up today at my website and you'll get it through as in the newsletter. But my final thought here is so much of what midwives do is invisible. It is in those tender moments of comfort, making a cup of tea, holding someone's hand in the throes of labour, offering quiet words of encouragement, loving families through hardships and even bereavements. So to draw Naomi Stanlin, we need to be able to articulate what midwives do, especially when it looks like nothing, to remember our value for ourselves, first and foremost, but also to be able to communicate the work that we do and to continue to champion the critical role midwives have for women, birthing people and families across the globe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Claire. I know that you might be listening at some point, but thank you so much for your contribution. It's I've written down so many notes, just so good. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about this book and how it's coming out, and the importance of what you're saying is wonderful. Now, hopefully, Maeve and I can have a little bit of a chat about it after she's done her presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Dr. Maeve O'Connell, who's presently working as Assistant Professor of Midwifery in Fatima College of Health Sciences in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, where she's working with Dr. Georgina Souza to develop the first Bachelor's Midwifery degree programme. And as we've already heard tonight, they've just received accreditation, so it's wonderful that that's happened. But she has previously worked in Ireland and Bahrain and also in Wales as well as lecturers and senior lecturer, and she's also a fellow of the Faculty of Nursing and Midwifery at RCSI, which was awarded in recognition of her exceptional commitment, dedication and contribution to the delivery of care. Maeve holds a Master's in Advanced Practice from King's College London and a PhD in Medicine and Health from University College Cork, which concerns fear of childbirth and tocophobia in pregnant women. She's also the author of the new updated chapter on care in the first stage of labour in the newest edition of midwifery textbook May's Midwifery, and she's been an associate editor for Women and Birth Journal for 3 years and peer reviews for many journals. Maeve, the screen is now yours.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so let me share my screen. Have you got it? Here we are. Okay, thank you so much for your invitation to speak tonight, Jenny. I'm really excited to be here to speak on this topic. This is a topic that I'm really passionate about. I'm really passionate about midwifery care. And in fact, I wrote an editorial concerning this topic with Professor Deborah Davis for Women and Birth Journal recently. So if anybody wants to read that editorial, I'll share the link as well as a reference that they could access after this. Just to give our listeners some context, I am currently Assistant Professor of Midwifery in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, where midwifery is not widely known. We currently have less than 300 licensed midwives in the country. And to give you some context, there are 30,000 nurses. So maternity care is predominantly given by obstetric nurses widely in the country. So this was a topic that was really interesting to me when we discussed the topic for tonight. And these are the objectives of my presentation. Let's see if I can change slide. So today, we're going to learn more about an understanding of what midwives do. And I'll be looking at that from an educational perspective and from a regulation perspective, and maybe more of a global context, as well as and an educational context, as well as what we actually do. I want to depict some public perceptions of midwifery, and I hope you'll find that interesting. And then we're going to move on to discuss some current global challenges which face us in midwifery, and to debate the future of midwifery. So I went to my local gym earlier to ask some random members of the public who did not know me very well. They know my face, but they don't know me as a midwife. And I went to ask them, what do midwives do? So hopefully you can play the video now. Let's see. So I've come to my local gym to ask some people, what do midwives do? Let's see the answers.
Shoot.
Do you know what do midwives do?
Yes, I do. They assist in the birthing process.
Yeah?
Yeah, leading up to and during and after. They are there to support the mother and help give birth. I'm guessing.
Yay! Okay, so Martha, do you know what do midwives do?
They deliver children and look after the baby, well, give advice to the mothers and parents after childbirth.
Oh, very good answer. Okay, Alex, I have one question. What do midwives do?
What do? They deliver babies, I guess.
Yeah.
They do, don't they?
Do they do anything else?
That's all I know.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Evie, can I ask you, what do midwives do?
Help with babies when someone's pregnant, and how to go through the pregnancy, and then during the pregnancy and after the pregnancy.
Good answer. Okay, so Mike.
Hi.
Can I please ask you, do you know what do midwives do?
Help with delivery of birth.
Yeah, anything else?
Support pregnant women when they need help.
Good answer, thank you. Hi Patrick, can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
What do midwives do?
They deliver babies.
Great answer. Anything else?
And they look after the wonderful ladies that give birth.
Do you have any experiences?
I do not.
Hi Anthony, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, no problem at all.
What do midwives do?
What do
midwives do?
Midwives deliver babies.
Yeah, anything else?
They deal with, God, this is harder than I thought. They deal with like the lead up to the birth, giving like parents and mothers advice.
Okay, thanks. Defining what we do, especially here in the UAE, where it's not widely seen, where midwifery is not widely seen. So I also looked up some images. I went to the internet and I searched, what do midwives look like? And these are some of the images that I found. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see them. But if you're watching now, you can see that these are primarily white women. And there's various different images. There's very technological images, the image of a woman with a CTG. There is an image of a woman with a mask holding a baby. And there is a woman in a white coat with a stethoscope listening to the heart of I would say toddler, maybe like a 3-year-old child on a woman's knee. So very varied public perceptions of what it is that midwives look like. This is what midwives look like. So this year was very exciting because we got to go to the ICM in Bali, which was a wonderful experience. And the passion and the energy for midwifery was really, really felt there. And you can see all of these wonderful smiling faces. And you can see that midwives have many different faces. They're from all over the world. These midwives are from Indonesia, from the UK, from Ireland. There's midwives here from the UK. You can see Sheena Byron there and Hannah. You can see midwives there from London. You have Jan and Sam and Camilla. Midwives from the UAE, we have the lovely Dr. Tracy and Caradine, who is one of our growing members of the midwifery education team here in Fatima College. She'll be joining us soon to educate the midwives of the UAE. We have midwives from India. There's Indy, and we have midwives from Canada, Danielle, and midwives from Ireland and from Saudi. There's Dr. Roa and Grania. And we have midwives from Burundi, including there are male midwives, so not all midwives are women, and that's a common myth or perception. We have midwives from Cardiff, Nikki and the girls from Cardiff, and midwives from France. So we have midwives from all over the world at the ICM, and I'm a big believer in that you can't be what you can't see. So if we're trying to recruit midwives and we're trying to grow midwifery around the world, we need to really grow our public perception to improve the public knowledge about what it is that midwives look like and what it is that midwives actually do. And you can see from, those people that I asked at the gym, they talked about midwives delivering babies. And you will see from the evidence that because of shortages of midwives, because of worldwide cuts of funding, and perhaps replacement of midwives with nursing, the public perception of midwifery is slightly skewed and has changed as well over time. So in the background of this slide, you will see an image of Call the Midwife, which is a really popular series in the UK. Maybe not so widely known in the UAE, but if you haven't checked it out, check it out. I'm sure it's available online. And this is depicts midwifery in the 1950s in the UK. And I think that midwifery has changed an awful lot since the 1950s. It's gone through many different changes. And maybe that's a different perception of midwifery that the public will have. But we do have this beautiful definition of midwifery from the International Confederation of Midwives, which says that midwifery is the profession of midwives. Only midwives can practice midwifery. It has a unique body of knowledge, skills, and professional attitudes drawn from disciplines shared by other health professions such as science and sociology, but practiced by midwives within a professional framework of autonomy, partnership, ethics, and accountability. So it's a very responsible job. We have honed clinical skills, and we also have a particular philosophy and values which are particular to our profession. So midwifery is actually a very ancient profession, and it's as natural and critical to humanity as birth itself. It upholds and reflects the cultural practices of women and their families, and that's really important, especially when we're thinking of bringing midwifery into cultures like the UAE, where we're trying to introduce Emirati midwives. It's really important that we hold those cultural practices and value those cultural practices of women and their families. So this profession actually goes way back in time. It goes back as 40,000 BC. So that's how old this profession actually is. It's not new. However, we've gone through major challenges throughout history. Back in ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman times, we saw enormous progress in the development and acknowledgement of midwifery as an autonomous, scientific, and respected paid profession, actually, back in those times. But in late 300 BC, the social attitudes about female midwives changed, and midwifery became a profession under the hierarchy of male-supervised medicine. So then when we went through the Middle Ages, we had this period where female midwives and healers were considered to be heretics or witches, and would have been hung or burned to death at that time. Fast forward then to the 17th century, and throughout colonialism, we saw periods where women who worked as skilled midwives in Africa were actually enslaved as midwives and brought to the US and other places to provide birth support, until during the 19th century, when there was again a shift to male-supervised obstetric medicine. And nowadays we're facing many different challenges with global variation in midwifery practice, and there's been challenges with our autonomy, our role and our legal status, unfortunately. So we have this lovely definition of a midwife, which again is from the ICM, and it states that a midwife is a person who has successfully completed a midwifery education program that is based on the ICM essential competencies for midwifery practice and the framework of the ICM global standards for midwifery education, recognised in the country where it's located, who has acquired the requisite qualifications to be registered and or legally licensed to practice midwifery and use the title of midwife, and who demonstrates the competency in the practice of midwifery. So you can see that this title, midwife, is actually protected in legislation, and that it should not be used by anyone else except anyone who meets this global definition. And I suppose traditionally we think about midwifery as a really happy role where we celebrate new life, but it is also very challenging because we particularly recently are facing issues like climate change, where we are facing global emergencies during catastrophes. And we also have many other different challenging situations, such as during perinatal care. And our role also includes working for women who are dealing with bereavement and loss. These essential competencies, which are outlined here by the ICM, can give you a general information about what it is that the midwives do. While there's general competencies that you can see under point 1, we focus on care throughout pre-pregnancy and antenatal. So we follow the woman through the pregnancy journey to when they're planning their pregnancy, giving them family planning information. We can care for them throughout all of their antenatal care. We also lead and provide labour care when everything is normal. And then, as Claire stated, we recognise when there are deviations from the norm and get relevant collaborative care when in a timely fashion when the need arises, and we're experts in recognising when there are deviations from the norm. And then we also have this ongoing care, which is the Cinderella service in our maternity care, which is the postpartum period, and we provide infant feeding support and support for women who are going through this transition to motherhood. So our role actually encompasses a wide range of skills and competencies, and this needs to be more widely recognised. So we have this fantastic body of work, which is the Lancet Midwifery series, which we really need to harness this to advocate for midwifery. This was published almost 10 years ago, and it was shown that more than 56 outcomes actually are improved when we implement midwifery. And we are moving from the Millennium Development Goals, which saw a massive success in reduction of maternal and newborn mortality, to the SDGs, which are looking beyond mortality to thriving and supporting women to have fulfilling births, respectful maternity care. And we're trying to empower women now to make informed decisions to achieve the births that they want and to make that transition to motherhood. So we're going beyond survival to actually thriving in motherhood. But we do know that midwives have the potential to save the lives of women and children at a scale unmatched by other health interventions. In the Lancet Global Health, Nova et al. Estimated that 67% of maternal deaths, 64% of neonatal deaths, and 65% of stillbirths in the 88 low-income and middle-income countries, accounting for the vast majority of these deaths, could be averted if we implement universal provision of care by midwives who meet international standards and are integrated into health systems in the context of multidisciplinary teams. So we call for urgent investment in midwifery to enable midwives to fulfill their potential, because we have this massive potential to save lives and to improve outcomes for women and babies worldwide. And we can also contribute towards this universal health coverage and SDG agenda. So again, coming back to the ICM, if we think about what it is that midwives do, this is our scope of midwifery practice. And this outlines particularly what it is that we do. And we've been working on this in the UAE recently. We were, myself and Dr. Georgina were part of the national committee who updated the scope of midwifery practice. Dr. Gina actually chaired the committee, and we're very excited to make some changes and to have an impact to really try and drive forward this agenda of ensuring that midwives can work within their full scope of midwifery practice, because this is a challenge that we're facing worldwide. So you can see there that we are accountable and we're responsible for what we do. We work together with women to give them the support, care and advice during pregnancy, labour and the postpartum period. We do conduct births, which is what the public perception that we saw. We do include preventative measures, the promotion of normal birth, the detection of complications in mother and child, accessing medical care and appropriate assistance, and also being experts in carrying out emergency measures. Importantly, I want to draw your attention to the final point on that slide, which says that midwives can practice in any setting, including the home, the community, hospitals, clinics or health units. And currently here in the UAE, home birth is actually illegal. And this is something that I want to tease out and to talk about tonight in my presentation. So you can see from my presentation so far that there is far more to what midwives do than the public perception. We do far more than simply deliver babies. So the next thing that I want to focus on is the fact that midwives are advocates for women and their newborns. We advocate for equitable access to midwife-led services for women because we know that midwives are the key to improving healthcare outcomes for women and their newborns during childbirth. We know from the evidence that sometimes we have interventions that are carried out too late, unfortunately, and more recently we're seeing evidence of interventions being carried out too much too soon. We're seeing skyrocketing cesarean section rates of 50 and 60%, and we know that midwives can make a difference when it comes to this, and this has implications for society at large. If we have cesarean section rates of 50 and 60%, this is going to have massive implications, and I think it's something that we really need to consider going forward for society and the climate and the whole planet. So again, coming back to what it is that midwives do, and a lot of what we do is actually watchful attendance. We are with women, we are optimizing physiological processes, we are reassuring them that what is happening is normal, and if it's not normal, then we're escalating appropriately. We're delivering individualized holistic care rather than a task-based approach, which I suppose as a nurse, this is primarily one of the big differences between nursing and midwifery, if we are to go there, that nurses are more likely to do things on a task-based way, whereas we are looking at the woman as a whole. We are coming at birth from the salutogenic approach, looking at this as a normal physiological process and something that most women will go through. And we provide care for all the multidimensional aspects of care, not just the physical, but the psychological, emotional, socio-cultural aspects of care that are important and that women value. And we also have a role in obviously supporting infant feeding as well. So I want to talk about tonight the role of the midwife in talking about choice of birth setting, because globally we see that women are fighting for the right to birth wherever they want to. And we're also seeing issues that women don't actually know their choices of models of care. And I suppose this is because traditionally women gave birth in many settings, including the home, but with increasing biomedical models where childbirth is viewed as risky, birth has moved to the hospital, and now the majority of women, the vast majority of women, are giving birth in hospitals because they don't know that they have any other choice. And we have seen removal of public funding for home birth, and this summer I've been to Australia, I've been to Southern Cross University as a visiting scholar in the Gold Coast, and I've been home in Ireland, I've met midwives at the ICM, and I'm seeing that this is a global challenge where women want to have home births, and unfortunately there's been challenges in getting public funding. And we know that there's evidence of iatrogenic harm in hospital environments. That means that some women, when they go into hospital environments, it doesn't necessarily guarantee a safe outcome. And in fact, some of the interventions that we do can actually cause harm to women. There's also growing evidence that for some women, hospital may be more harmful than home birth. And we do know that women often will choose to free birth rather than give birth in hospitals. So we need to reflect as healthcare professionals on our duty of care to these women who have such great fear of us as a healthcare profession that they don't trust us anymore. And they see the outcomes, they see high cesarean section rates, and they are educating themselves. They have access to the NICE guidance, they have access to best practice, and they are fearful to give birth in our hospital. So we need to reflect upon that and to think, how can we build this trust again, you know? So I found this study which looked at midwives' perceptions of midwifery, because an issue that I've noticed and that has drawn my attention is that majority of midwives these days are being trained and educated and practicing in hospital settings. So if we don't have perspectives or experience of home birth, how does that impact how we practice? And so this was an Australian study conducted in 2020 by Coddington et al. And it's entitled Seeing Birth in a New Light, the Transformational Effect of Exposure to Home Birth for Hospital-Based Midwives. And what they did in this study was they interviewed 21 midwives and midwifery managers from public hospitals with experiences of publicly funded home birth models in Australia. And they found, very interestingly, but unsurprisingly, that witnessing undisturbed birth at home transformed midwives' attitudes towards birth. So for some of these midwives, after they'd seen home birth, they felt they were seeing undisturbed birth for the first time. And when you witness birth, when you hear those noises, when you are with the woman and you observe her going through these stages in her comfortable environment with the oxytocin flowing, in her safe environment with a midwife who was known to her, it's a very different experience. And these midwives actually questioned their current understanding of physiological birth, and it helped them to develop a new awareness of the powerful influence that the environment has on labouring women. And this understanding actually resulted in changes to their practice. So this is a diagram depicting the themes that were found in this study, which I recommend you to read if you're interested. You can go to the full study. But the midwives described the transformational power of exposure to home birth. So these were hospital-based midwives, and they described feeling apprehensive, skilling up for home birth, and being supported and mentored, and bringing an international perspective when they made this leap from hospital to the home. They described the feeling of stepping into the woman's territory, witnessing undisturbed birth, and gaining this new understanding of normal physiological birth, which prompted them to change their midwifery practice when they saw birth in this new light. They described increasing interdisciplinary trust and building a trust in home birth. And this is something that we see worldwide, this kind of skepticism between home birth midwives and hospital midwives. Sometimes there's a bit of a clash, and how can we support each other? So they talked about building trust and developing this relationship. They talked about enduring scrutiny, and I think that's something that midwives will relate to. I'm sure the discussions after this might hit a nerve or stimulate discussion. They talked about being committed to keeping women safe. So they want to deliver a safe experience for women. And they talked about sustaining the model. And at the end, they felt that they recognized the benefits of publicly funded home birth. They felt secure. They felt they were networked in. And they felt that they avoided the drama of transfer through these increased relationships with the home birth midwives. And they talked about making home birth more accessible overall. So this was a really positive finding of the study. So what is this? I'm sure most of our listeners here, I hope most of our listeners and most of our people who are tuned in tonight will know what this silver instrument in the middle is. If you don't, maybe you should check one out. It's called the Pinard. And this is the midwives tool. You will see I have product placement there as well. I have the Maze Midwifery book behind. So our past president, Franca Caddy of the ICM, she called for us as midwives to celebrate the work of the Pinard. She gave a beautiful presentation at the ICM this year, which was so inspiring. And she talked about the relationship that is built when midwives use the Pinard, and that this is a dying art and a skill which midwives must keep and must fight to keep this practice. And it's a symbol of midwifery, and it's a powerful symbol. And if we believe in midwives for a healthier future, we should be promoting this best practice to listen into the fetal heart. So I call on everyone here watching tonight to don your Pinard and to be really proud of your Pinard wherever you are tonight. So I'm going to move on now to some of the barriers and facilitators of midwifery worldwide. Because we know that midwifery is facing lots of challenges. And the barriers are on the left and the facilitators there are on the right. So globally, we have a lack of recognition of the work that midwives do. And you can see that when we ask the general public, what is it that midwives do? They say delivering babies, maybe giving some support, but they don't recognize the wide amount, the wide scope of work that midwives do. And I haven't even touched on the work that midwives do in terms of leadership, education, working in policy, working in many different arenas, not just clinically. So there is work to be done in enhancing the public perception and the recognition of the valuable work that midwives do. The lack of an enabling environment, and we can talk about being under scrutiny, the ability to work in our full scope of practice. How are we actually facilitated to work within our working environments? If you're working in a hospital right now, do you feel like you can speak up? Do you feel like you can advocate for women? Or do you feel under pressure to do things within the system to keep people happy, as it were? We have to really consider this enabling environment. The lack of recognition of midwifery as a distinct profession, and I think here in the Middle East that is a real challenge for us, perhaps in the UK and in Ireland where it's really enshrined in law, and this is less of a challenge. But this can be for debate with Jenny afterwards. The overstretched midwifery workforce, and this has really come to the fore with COVID-19. We are going through burnout. We are going through a crisis with our midwifery workforce. People are feeling undervalued. They're feeling like they can't work as midwives in the way that they wish to. We wish to work in social models of care, moving out into the community. We wish to expand our full scope of midwifery practice, working in teams, delivering continuity of midwifery care, prioritizing women's experiences. And because we're so overstretched, midwives are facing burnout, they're facing moral dilemmas where they feel like they're just not giving the care that they wish to. And this is a real barrier and a challenge to midwifery, because we are naturally compassionate people who really are empathetic and feel for the women and babies that we care for. And sadly, a lot of midwives are leaving the NHS, and they're leaving the clinical practice to because they cannot face delivering what they perceive to be poor care. So how can we facilitate midwifery going forward? An association of midwives is a really positive thing. So globally, it's really important, if you're working in a country where you don't have an association of midwives, to try and get that that group together. In the United Arab Emirates, we have a midwifery section of the Emirates Nursing Association, which is really supportive of the midwifery agenda. So we're very fortunate. We need to inform the public about midwifery. Perhaps we can have campaigns about midwifery. I do think that there's lots of documentaries which depict what we do as midwives. And generally, I think the public do really value the profession. Even if they don't know the full scope of what it is that we do, they do value us. We need to increase the awareness of the full scope of midwifery services, have midwives working in antenatal clinics, in postnatal care, working in the community, and increasing home birth services, midwife-led services, whether it's a freestanding midwifery unit, expanding all of the full scope of midwifery practice. We need more midwives, and the State of the World's Midwifery report found that we are short nearly 1 million midwives worldwide. So increasing midwifery education is a key component of that. If we can develop midwifery education, Student midwives are the future midwives, and they are the future of midwifery and of healthcare for women and newborns worldwide. All of this is great, but unless we nourish our midwives and provide adequate support, we're going to lose them. So it's one thing recruiting them to the profession and telling them this is the most wonderful profession in the world, because it is, but we need to retain them. We need to pay them well. And finally, we need to collaborate with other professionals. So we do need to actually promote our profession within other professions as well, and recognise ourselves as a distinct profession. So we do need to advocate for midwifery. We can do this by sharing the evidence. Evidence is the way to go, and thankfully we have so much brilliant midwifery research, which is published now in international peer-reviewed journals. We have strong evidence and high-quality evidence to support the midwifery profession. And we have the women's voices. The women's experiences are going to drive change. The women will request midwifery care. In the UAE, where we just have new student midwives, they're already beginning to request care from a student midwife from Fatima College, because they know they have Emirati student midwives who speak their language, who understand their cultural needs, and their voices will drive this grassroots change which we need, because decisions made at an individual level impact people at other levels. So if we can make changes at this individual level, this will escalate to an international level. It will escalate from the community to the local authorities, to the provincial, to the national, to the regional, and to the international forum. So it's such a brilliant opportunity. And I have met some fantastic doulas, midwives, people in the birthing community this year who are really passionate about driving change. I think it's a really exciting time to be part of this profession. So I'm going to summarize my presentation tonight by saying that we have this fantastic profession of midwifery, which is important. It is delivering evidence-based care, and we are saving lives. And I will finish with the words of our past president, Franca Caddy from the ICM, who said that all midwives know when it's time to breathe and when it's time to push. This is our time to push for midwives.
Maeve, that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, and so much in that presentation that we could discuss and talk about. I'm very aware that we're getting a little bit over time. Please do stay on if you can, so that we can continue talking just for a little while. But it's fantastic to hear what you have to say, and also what Claire said as well. I was agreeing with so much what Claire was saying about invisible midwifery, about how much what we do is not necessarily measurable, it's not necessarily seen. And when she talked about sometimes it looks like we're doing nothing, is actually because we're doing something, is really important. And it reminded me of a quote from Dr. Marsden Wagner from very many years ago, when he said that the best midwives are those who sit on their hands, which is an interesting thing to think about in relation to what Claire was saying as well. And we could talk about that, but I have got some questions that have been buzzing through, and do add some more comments and questions if you want to. They've come through to me. In fact, a comment from Safa El Awa Hadid, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but says she loves your passion, Maeve. Agree with you 100%. We need to pay better, no tax, free degrees, and more respect. That sounds like a good idea for everybody, doesn't it? It would be great. And Sarah Mensah from Ghana also said, yes, that was a pinard, and the round one is the gestational wheel for calculating the EDD. Yes, do we still use those? Are we all still using those? Because I've been using those all my career in order to work that out, so it's great. But coming back to Octavia. Hello, Octavia, from City University. I'm interested in what midwives' scope of practice is and should be. it's interesting how much this varies in many countries, encompassing all of women's reproductive health from periods through maternity and abortion services right through to the menopause. And of course, that's what you talked about, Maeve, didn't you? That you had the ICM scope of practice there. Now, a lot of that scope of practice we are now not doing, certainly not in the UK. Is there anything you want to comment on that from your programme about what do you think is the scope of practice?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been exposed to a lot of different countries recently. I've just had the opportunity to meet midwives from across the world. And we actually had visitors from the American College of Nurse Midwives as well. And those midwives in particular were talking about things like doing cervical smears and perhaps like the menopause care, like you said, which they're like additional things to me. You know, I as a midwife who trained in Ireland, it's not something that we would have done. We would have witnessed and done placement with an additional course. So I think it does vary worldwide, but the main challenge is that we don't have enough midwives, that even like we're under so much strain and pressure with staffing and workforce. All the midwives are being drawn to the labour ward to delivery. Labour and birth is the main function of a midwife at the moment, simply because we don't have enough midwives. I think in an ideal world, we would be able to do that in high-income countries. I think in low-income countries, there might be different experiences of midwives being able to work across that full scope because of need. You know, like if you're the only midwife in a rural area, then you have to provide all of the full spectrum and the full scope of practice. But I think in Western world and high-income countries, it's a challenge that we're facing. We're just being put into this box. The labour ward is short, go there.
Yeah, and I think this is also becoming an issue in relation to some places that I have been seeing on social media, where you know, jobs are being advertised for nurses, which perhaps some of the role could be or should be the midwife's role. And this is beginning to become a little worrying. Perhaps, you know, we've had quite a lot of debate in relation to maternity care assistants and healthcare assistants, and actually what their role should be, what they can take off midwives and what they shouldn't be taking off midwives.
I think the danger is, isn't it, falling into task-based working. Exactly. And that's what I've seen, especially in areas like the postnatal ward and the antenatal ward, where they just do rounds of care, and there's this lack of relationship and a lack of looking at the bigger picture and the context. You know, what is happening for this woman at this time? Is she having repeat presentations? Has she been in and out a lot? What's happening in her psychosocial world? Where does she live? What's going on in her life? And those are the things that midwives can bring to care, really, you know.
Well, that took me right back to when I was a student, which is 40 years ago, 30 years, and about the fact that, you know, the lowest of the low, the first year student midwife would be expected to go around to do all the urinalysis of everyone. You know, it's things like that which is being brought back in at the moment, which is perhaps what we would be saying is not acceptable if we're not going to get a holistic approach for that particular woman. Is you know, it's becoming a tick box exercise, isn't it?
For sure.
Okay. Well, I just sorry to look online, because I've got to look up to my left here to have a look. And we've had another question from Janine McKnight. Hello, Janine. With the large increase in caesarean section rates, how can we ensure student midwives get their birth numbers required for registration?
That is a challenge, and there's been a debate about the number of births required, because where do we pull 40 births from? And I think there's countries where they're saying 20 births or 30 births, or do they have to be do they have to be unmedicated? Can they have had an epidural? Like, it's not evidence-based. Like, where is the evidence to say 40 is the magic number? We don't have that evidence. However, that is in the EU directive, and that's kind of the standard that we have followed. And we've drawn on that for our midwifery education programme. What do you think, Jenny?
I don't know the answer to it, because you're quite right. There isn't evidence behind that 40. I don't know where that came from. But I don't know what happens in places like Australia and New Zealand. Perhaps somebody can tell us. Of actually, how do we measure how you become a midwife, as a student? And I think maybe this is also something that is going to be discussed across the EU at different times in relation to this. I don't know how that's being taken forward, so I haven't got that information.
It's such a challenge, isn't it?
But it is a challenge, and I do feel for you student midwives who are out there at the moment. But it's still important at the moment that you are getting as much experience as you can of straightforward physiological birth, because as you quite rightly said when you were talking about home births and that study, that actually if you have that experience as a student or even as a midwife of going to a home birth, you see the difference of what it's like. And for my particular research study I did for my PhD a long time ago, about the art of midwifery, I can remember also the difference that midwives felt when they walked through the double doors into the labour ward, into the high-tech areas, about how they transformed their practice because they just walked through those doors.
And that hierarchy of suddenly sort of the woman doesn't become the centre of the care. We're trying to aim to provide woman-centred care. In the home, the woman is the centre of the care because you're a guest in her house. Whereas when she walks into your space, she feels like a visitor in your area. So you have the hierarchy. So it's this kind of perception, and it goes against, doesn't it? But student midwives should grab opportunities for elective placements. If you have the opportunity to do Erasmus, to find an area where you can witness undisturbed birth or even meet midwives who practice in these ways, it has such an inspiring experience. During the summer, I actually visited a birth centre in Bali. I actually love Bali so much I went back again. And I went to visit the Bhumi Sahat Birth Centre, which is run by Ibu Robin Lim. I have some pictures actually. I don't know if you want to show them, but it was a beautiful experience, and it gave me some faith in midwifery again. It brought me back to how birth can be, and the social model of care where birth is viewed as normal and part of society. It was in the community. It was very much, the birth centre was just very much within the community. People were coming and going for other reasons. There were elderly people coming there for blood pressure checks. There were youths coming for IT literacy and reading. And women were giving birth in that same space. They were coming for breastfeeding support in the same space. And it was just such a loving, compassionate experience. And it just brought me back to what we want to do as midwives. We want to provide a loving experience for the birth of this baby and for this family.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different environment altogether, isn't it, to see those kind of experiences. But yeah, as students, if you get those kind of experiences, to go to other places to see
anywhere.
Like.
When I was a student, I went to America. I went to Bay Area in Annapolis, which was alongside midwifery unit. But just take any opportunity that you can to even speak to midwives who work in those ways, because you will always take something away.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of lovely comments for you, Maeve, actually online, from people to say thank you. The stunning speech from Nicole. Sasha, thank you, it's amazing. MS, I don't know who that is. Amazing presentation, thank you. Edith, Kumipoko, great presentation and information. Roshan Lennon, fab insight, Maeve, into changing practice and how to promote midwifery-led care. Tracy Catholic says, as a first-year student in Manchester, it's wonderful to see how passionate other people are about midwifery. I hope that one day I'll be an inspiring midwife of the future too. Tracy, I'm sure you will be. I'm sure you will be. It's wonderful. No doubt. And Joe Daggerston, hello, Joe from Ames is here tonight as well. Wonderful to see you present on this tonight, especially your consideration of the importance of mothers and midwives working together to boost support for brilliant midwifery infrastructure. And Safa again came on, Safa El-Hadid, we need mentorship to enhance midwifery care. With technology, surely this can be achieved. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful if we can set something up to mentor midwives throughout the world? I'm sure that if you keep coming on to Midwifery Hour as well, that you'll keep getting support as well for your practice as well. Oh wow, there's just all these coming through, but I think we're getting a little bit over time, so I'm very conscious of that. Maeve, is there any one final thing that you would like to say? I mean, how you talked about how we grow public perceptions. At the moment, we are being constantly put down on social media. Midwifery practice profession is being put down. Have you got any final tips for people to actually how we can celebrate this?
I think we need to celebrate ourselves. We have a lot to celebrate. We are a strong profession. We are valued by the public at large. We have so much to offer. Oh, there I am with Ibu Robin Lim.
Okay. Yeah.
And we believe in compassionate care. So I think we just need to be really strong in our faith in ourselves as midwives. And we need to really own the profession as well. I think that there's times, I think, when maybe you feel like I should step back, or you feel like your voice isn't being heard. But if our voices come together collectively, we will be heard. So if we all kind of sing from the same hymn sheet and have the same voice, that's really important. So we really need to stop this stigma of or conflict between midwives working in different settings. I think that we need to value the impact of midwives working in independent ways and supporting them when women do transfer into hospital, respecting those midwives who bring them in, and yeah, just believe in our profession. And I will say that midwives who make a change, they don't have a PhD, they don't have a master's necessarily. It's one person can make such a difference. So someone like Tracy, that first year student, she might have a brilliant idea. Share your ideas, bring your innovations to your midwifery lecturers. We're really driving for midwifery innovation. Sometimes a really simple thing can make a big difference in practice, and can make a difference for midwives in practice. So it doesn't matter who you are, if you're a first year student midwife, if you've been qualified for 20 years, if you have a PhD, whatever it is, we're all midwives. We all stand together and we all have one voice. And we can do this, we can raise the profession and we can join together, but we just need more of us, and we need us to stay in the profession. So be kind to each other, nourish each other's souls, and come together. I think things like the ICM build our spirit, bring us together, and bring our voices to be more passionate about what it is that we do.
Wonderful. We're going to need to have you back. We really have got to have you back to carry on talking about this, because we just need to raise up everyone's passion again. And we have one final quote from Tiana, said, "Thank you. This has really opened my eyes a lot more and has encouraged to be part of that change in midwifery." Wonderful, Tiana. I hope that you can take that forward. Thank you, everybody, for participating tonight. Sorry that it's gone over a little bit more than we should do. This will be available on podcasts on Friday, and the full recording will go out to everyone who's registered tonight, and then in the newsletter next week on Tuesday. Just remember to sign up for the various events that are coming up, which will be online, to come and join us, which I talked about earlier. And we've also got the full agenda for the Scotland Festival on the 28th of November is now online. So do have a look at it, because there are some absolutely great speakers. Thank you very much to everyone. Midwifery Hour next week is baby loss, helping and support mothers and families. The 18th is midwifery through the perimenopause, which is going to be really interesting, about a challenge and exodus and opportunity. And the 25th of October is going to be about writing for publication. In fact, our lovely Sue MacDonald will be speaking on that occasion, talking about May's Midwifery and how they developed the new book. Thank you so much, Maeve, and thank you very much to Claire Feely as well for her presentation. Go out and order her book. And thank you to all the rest of the team, Angelo in the back, and everyone else on the team. Good night.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to be here, and I always try as hard as I can to support this excellent platform that's so flexible, that's responsive, that's contemporary, that's in people's homes, in people's pockets, and in people's hands, wherever they happen to be.